Good morning. My name is Vanetta Young. I'm founder of Vanetta Young Advisors, and I'm sending this to you because in all of the fantastic time that we were having yesterday, forgot to press record during the roundtable. But I did want you to have the content of the roundtable, the very meaty content of how to build out your firm. So I wanted to do a second recording just to make sure that you have that. So I am going to share my screen here and jump into the presentation. And please feel free to email me with any questions that you might have. So like I said, this presentation, this roundtable in particular, was about building your firm. And building your firm sits at the intersection of credibility and capacity. So like I said, I'm Vanetta Young. I am an investment readiness and fund formation advisor. Essentially, I'm an outsourced chief strategy officer for folks who are forming their first or second private equity, venture capital, or real estate fund. So I walk alongside you as you build out your firm and tell your story to ensure that your fundraise goes further, faster, better. I'm also a writer, a personal essay, short fiction, and memoir, basically anything poetry. So I guess you could say that I write prose. And I'm a very proud double Hoya. I graduated from Georgetown undergrad with an English major and an MBA in finance. And when it comes to building your firm, I think the first thing to say is congratulations. You're a general partner. You have chosen to do this. You are an investor. And you're an entrepreneur. Like it or not, you are starting a firm and you're building an institution. And why do I say that? It's because institutions, limited partners like the ones that I have listed on the screen here, the CalPERS and HarborVest, the GCM Grosvenors of the world, are institutions that want to invest in other institutions. LPs are not investing in your deals. I know this might be difficult to sort of process, but they're not investing in your deals. They're investing in you. So your job is to inspire conviction, and that means a really high level of confidence in you. And you inspire that conviction by creating capacity and credibility. And when I say capacity here, I don't necessarily mean in the sense of building out your team. Yes, obviously that does play a part, but it's more about, how have you shown focus and that you have a plan to do what you said you were going to do? So there's two ways that I'm going to address this in the rest of the presentation. One way that's a bit more tactical, in the sense of what you actually need to do to start a firm in the practical sense. And then there's the more strategic things. So things that are perhaps not obvious, but there are also things that basically no one other than me would tell you about. But first, I think it's really important to ask yourself basically verbatim, realistically, what should I do myself and what should I outsource? As it comes to building your business, building out your firm, realistically, what should I do myself and what should I outsource? Notice that I didn't say, what can I do? Because I believe that you can do everything. You are incredibly capable people that if you are in this industry and you have made it to the point of starting your own private equity or venture capital firm or real estate firm, then you are competent. So it's not so much about what you can do, it's about what you should do. Where are your talents? What brings you joy in the very much the Marie Kondo sense? What sparks joy for you? And what is going to be the best use of your time? So with that in mind, I'll move into the tactical. The first thing that I talk to prospective fund managers about is building a business plan. You have an investment strategy, but you also need a business strategy as well. It's essentially, saying, where are you going and creating a map to get there. Ultimately, these are some of the things that set you apart. Really things that sound very traditional, like having a mission, vision, and value statement, serve as the foundation for your firm's culture, but also help to differentiate you at a certain point. We're going to come back to that culture note as well. As a part of creating a business plan, a budget is a really significant portion of that. Obviously, emerging managers are generally pressed for cash, but sometimes I wonder if they're really thinking about how pressed they are. How much thought have you put into what you actually need and how much it's going to cost? You can't really do that unless you actually take the time to map out, this is what I need, this is what it's going to cost. All in the vein of saying, this is where I am now, and this is where I'm going. Next will be your story. Taking into consideration your audience and the brand that you're building. Thinking about your investor relations strategy, which LPs are you seeking to target? You're probably not going to go for the CalPERS, or the AlpInvest straight out of the gate. You're probably going to target family offices, for example. So what is the information that's important for them to know? And how do you build credibility and conviction in a family office? The other part of this is knowing your brand. What do you stand for? This should be something that's easily communicated in a website, for example. And one thing I do want to emphasize is that your brand is not the same thing as your logo. I've spoken with several emerging managers who are very much on top of getting their logo built, but you can actually wait on that. Your brand identity is a really core part of your story and figuring out what your firm really stands for. That will likely evolve, particularly as you start to deploy more capital and you'll really think about who you are, who your company is in your community. The icon that represents that, your logo, isn't actually as important, and you can wait on that for a little while. So here's the point where we talk about literal capacity and talking about building out your team. Who are the folks who are going to support you as you deploy the capital that you say that you want to raise? So some of this, it might be a little bit easier for venture than it is for private equity, largely depending on how sort of hands-on or boots on the ground you are in your companies. With venture, you just might not need as many people if you're not taking a ton of board seats that you might be more inclined to do as a private equity investor. This is obviously not always the case. One thing that is always the case is always start with administrative and operation support. There are many things that can and do come up in the course of running a business: scheduling meetings, data entry, bill pay, planning out your travel for when we were traveling and will start to travel again. So doing all of these things can very much take the focus off you're doing the work that you said you would do, which is deploying capital. So finding a really great administrative or operations person to support you very early on is going to set you up for success in the long term. And you can find even virtual assistants who are really great. My assistant, Denise, who my roundtable participants know pretty well, she's actually virtual. And you probably wouldn't know that given the way that we interact. So you don't necessarily have to hire a full-time operations or administrative person. There are many ways for you to take advantage of part-timers, of VAs to get the support you need. That same logic kind of goes for the analyst. If you think about the data support that you need, it's probably been quite a while since you've done financial modeling. An analyst probably is the second person that you would want to hire. And the question is, is that someone you need to bring on full time? Can you have them work on a part-time basis? Or can you get an intern to work on a project basis? One thing I do say is please always pay your interns if at all possible. When I say at all possible, include that in your budget. Particularly if your interns and part-timers are women or people of color, you should really definitely pay them to build goodwill and to show that you value the work that they're doing and you value them as well. You can grow into an associate or a VP role as your business builds out. And the same thing goes for an investor relations or business development person. These aren't things that you necessarily need at the beginning. You can probably work with your administrative and operations person to see how much of that work that they can do before hiring for these larger roles. I guess the caveat here is that it assumes that you already have an investment partner, or you're at least in conversations with an investment partner. If you're not had those conversations, that's something that you're going to want to do very early on, because a lot of these decisions that you're making about your team and as you build out your business plan you're going to want to do that with your co-founder. So next would be the legal and operating stuff. The very practical things that you can kind of check off the boxes. If you're going to register with the SEC, do that. Get your partnership agreements. If you do have an investment partner, another GP who also owns the management company, your limited partner agreement. And then there are operating things like a CRM system. How are you keeping track of your deal flow and the folks that you're speaking with as you encounter them in networking? What are your hiring protocols? Do you have a bank account? How are you processing payroll? Do you have office or co-working space? The thing with the office is wanting to have an address that's not your home address to provide that extra level of credibility. But then also, if you have a relationship with certain law firms, ones like Kirkland and Ellis, for example, they will give you office space for meetings, and that definitely provides an even greater level. You want to talk about a level up of legitimacy is, meeting with a potential LP in the office of Kirkland and Ellis. So definitely look into having a really great office and co-working space when we're all back going into work. And finally, select your advisors. Clearly, there are certain things, like harkening back to what I said earlier, like the difference between what you can do and you should do. You're going to need legal counsel because you're not a lawyer if you're not a lawyer. A fund administrator is going to make your life much easier. I do highly recommend outsourcing your compliance, frankly, for compliance purposes. You will need an accountant. There are things like branding and creative that if you have that skill set, by all means, use it. If not, make the investment in it. And then you also have folks like me. Like I said, I am your outsourced chief strategy officer. I am here to walk with you as you build this out and to make your fundraise go further, faster, better. Selecting advisors is important because there is no legitimate reason to do this alone. And I think if there's one thing that we can see from the Emerging Manager RoundTable community is that you have support. And I hope that you use the community to support you in this and do not think that you have to do all of this alone. So we're going to get into the strategic. So the things that are differentiators, but are probably things that only I would tell you. So the first is to respect the culture that you are creating. You probably have experience working for someone. So what's it going to be like working for you? What is the culture that you want to create? And it goes back to that mission, vision, values part of your business plan. How are your values playing out on a day-to-day basis? So if you say you value transparency, but after you've built out your team, you're giving a set of information, you're giving information to one set of your team and not to another. I would venture that means you don't actually value transparency. So how are you being true to your values on a day-to-day basis? The tactical thing about culture is that you're going to want to have an employee handbook or some sort of written set of expectations for your team, LPs are not likely to ask to see that, but the point of emphasizing culture and having those expectations is that the way you run your firm speaks to your character, and you want to show evidence of good character. And I know this sounds very obvious, but it is just that important that I want to emphasize this even more, that the way you run your firm speaks to your character, and you're going to want to show good character. And along similar lines, set a clear and, as I say, preferably noble intention. What is your why in being in this business? LPs can smell BS from a mile away. They meet with hundreds, maybe thousands of GPs per year. They know the folks who are in this for money. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with being in this for money. It's just that you are trying to differentiate yourself. And being in it for the money is not going to be something that makes you stand out. So really investigating why you are in this business. When I think about this, I think about a fairly well-known and reasonably large private equity firm that I won't give the name, obviously, but they went through a leadership transition, and the new leader just had a bit more of a pompous air about himself. He'd been at that firm for quite a while and had made a good bit of money. And you could tell that he was still basically kind of in it for the money. And my firm wound up not investing in this particular fund, partly because that didn't inspire conviction in us. His personality, frankly, just didn't inspire conviction in us. There were also some other issues in terms of performance as well. But thinking about the previous leader of that firm, which was essentially the reason why my firm had invested in this particular firm's funds, was that the previous leader was a very deeply genuine person who obviously had been in private equity for a very long time and had made a lot of money, but just walked with a bit more sense of purpose. And I had spoken with him at an annual meeting, and he had mentioned that his child had been born with a disability. And that totally changed his focus and his reason for being in the business. And he wound up giving millions of dollars to charities related to the disability that his child had been born with. I'm not saying you have to have something as dramatic as a child born with a disability, but it's about having a really, really clear sense of why you are here. And finally, I would say, invest in yourself. My spouse is a very big Jay-Z fan, me not so much, but I think this phrase that I think is his most famous is just really, really key. And it speaks to the fact that, like I said, LPs are not investing in your deals, they're investing in you, that you are the business, man. So what investments are you making in yourself? LPs want to see that because you are an investor, that you are making good choices in every way that you run your business. So be wise, not cheap. What is the quality of the legal counsel that you're getting? If you're going the route of just trying to get the cheapest option, that's actually not showing a great investment in your business. What external consultants do you need to give yourself any sort of guidance so that you are very sharp? What coaching do you need? Someone on the roundtable yesterday mentioned that they had gotten an acting coach so they can know how to present really well. And that is fantastic advice. And I mean, to go even deeper, sometimes we might even need to invest in a bit of life coaching or therapy to know that we are actually very capable of doing this. What I'm ultimately getting at is that if you don't invest in you, Why should any LP invest in you? If you're not willing to believe in yourself to the point of putting skin in the game, an LP should not believe, would not and should not believe in you either. But I want you to know, if you did have a little bit of a visceral reaction to that question, I want you to notice that. You know, if I can't invest in me, why should someone else? And if you're not able to really answer that question in an affirmative, I do want you to know that you are sufficient. And yes, I do put this in every presentation that I do because I believe it and I want you to believe it too, that you are sufficient and that you have everything that you need. You just need to get ready. So I want you to go out there and inspire conviction. Thank you so much for tuning into this. Please ask me any questions. Feel free to reach out to me via email at vanetta@vyadvisors.com. I would be thrilled to answer your questions. And I also want to make a little bit of a pitch for my next roundtable. I'm going to be doing an interview with coach and consultant Bonnie King-Taylor, who has been an absolute game changer for me. She's been a literal lifesaver for many people. She's going to be talking about setting intentions, about thriving in the face of rejection, and she's also going to cover a bit more about the importance of investing in yourself and what that can look like. So thank you so much again for joining me. I send you my sincerest apologies for not recording the amazing amount of fun that we have on the Emerging Manager Roundtable. After I do my presentation, we do have a round of networking where folks get to meet other emerging managers and also vendors, service providers who are also supporting folks in the industry. So I really hope that you come out to hear Bonnie. It's going to be super, super awesome, but also to meet other folks in this emerging manager community. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next month.